I'm Wilson Lai.
I'm Benjamin Yap.
I'm Eli Sands.
You're listening to Deep Cut. 3, 2, 1. Okay.
I don't know if we can use it. I don't think we should use it for copyright reasons.
Oh, because we're so close to the original that it'll tag as a copyright.
Copyright ID.
Hey, if we can cover Inside Llewyn Davis, we can
yeah.
we can use yodeling.
That. We can yodel a little bit. Okay. On Deep Cut, we compare a director's most popular film with a personal favorite chosen by one of us.
That was such a quick turn. I'm just really impressed. That was just like in the zone. We also discussed the director's life and career to bring in context that helps us view their movies as they may want us to.
Welcome everyone to our final Coen Brothers episode. Or is it? I don't know. We might surprise ourselves.
Yeah.
Who
and
knows?
You as well, yeah.
This week, we're going to close out our series on the Coens by going back in time to their second feature, Raising Arizona. So this is my deep cut pick. It's a huge nostalgia pick for me because the Coens were one of the first directors I ever did a deep dive into. And Raising Arizona was the one I remember the most fondness for. I also had a huge crush on Holly Hunter in this movie. So there's also that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I just want to start off and ask, what do y'all think of this movie?
I really enjoyed it. This is the second time I've seen this movie, and I'm realizing that I don't think I was paying that much attention the first time I was watching it. Probably because I had a really long day and I don't know, my mind was somewhere else and I was not. You guys understand, like, you really need to like give yourself into the movie in order for a movie to really work for you. And I think Raising Arizona is a really prime example of it because it has so many different tones to it. It's sort of like how if the Coen brothers just took their most funny movie and then their like most like violent, gruesome movie and then like put them together a little bit and their most like emotional movie as well and put them together. I think the tone switches this time around were phenomenal, and the ability to have still such a coherent story and like emotional through line through the movie is really great. I think that Holly Hunter holds the emotional core of the movie,
Totally.
and it's still so strong. Like, come ridiculous like fight scene, come slapstick stuff, come all the jokes. At the core of the movie, there's still Holly Hunter and her character's desire to have a baby and the conflict that she has. And yeah, I just really liked it this time around. In the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's still high on the Coen brothers list, but I really appreciated the movie this time around.
Eli?
Similarly to Wilson, my opinion of Raising Arizona went up on my second viewing. I think the first time I might have seen it on a plane. Dun, dun, dun. And when does a movie ever benefit from being watched on a plane? Actually, no, I take that back.
A few times.
There are movies that really work on planes.
Yeah, the first Korean film I watched, Like Fire Like Sun, I was on a plane. And it stuck with me.
Everybody Knows by Oscar Farhadi I saw on a plane, and I enjoyed that.
Oh, yeah. I'm forgetting a good plane movie that I've seen, but I know it's true that I've seen a good movie in the plane before.
So this time around, I think I enjoyed the vibe a little bit more. I remembered it as being almost like a live action cartoon in places, and that made it feel weightless to me on the first view. But this time around, I definitely felt what Wilson's saying about Holly Hunter really occupying the center of the movie. And I would even tweak that a little bit and say that it's the relationship between Nicolas Cage's H.I. McDonough and Holly Hunter's Ed that is the grounding factor. Raising Arizona is definitely occupied by the kind of side characters that we've discussed in our prior Coen episodes, where they're heightened and a little bit exaggerated and almost one note, but because they have so much specificity, it doesn't feel like it's one note. Yeah. But I definitely stand by the sort of idea that it's verging on live action cartoon in places. Not in a bad way.
I think you definitely hit the nail on the head. I think they were actually going for live action cartoon, and I was reading some information about the film and people were talking about the Sam Raimi influence of it.
Yes.
And Evil Dead 2 comes out the same year as this, which I've not seen, is apparently also very much close to a live action cartoon.
Whoa.
So they were kind of operating on the same wavelength. And if you didn't know, Sam Raimi was very integral to like the Coen start as filmmakers. He was involved with I'm not sure exactly, but I know he was somehow involved with helping to get Blood Simple funded. And they were also using Sam Raimi's kind of style of filmmaking as a way to sell Blood Simple to the hundreds of investors, like family dentists that they had for Blood Simple. It makes a lot of sense. Like, this kind of has a very Looney Tunes vibe. You even have Woody Woodpecker, who's a tattoo that appears twice, which kind of gives you a hint as to what they were doing. For me, this film occupies such a huge part of the nostalgia in my brain somehow, which I cannot explain, because this was one of the first few films I saw and loved like unapologetically as a young film nerd, I guess. I don't know when I first saw this. It was maybe up to 10 years ago, maybe even earlier. And I think the thing that both of you are talking about, which is the emotional core of this, is so strong that despite the zany action set pieces and the kind of over-the-top humor, the exaggerated characters, like, you have this strong emotional core that really gets you. And I always think about the scene in the car near the end of the movie when Ed is breaking up with him. And despite all the craziness, like just thinking about that scene right now is like almost bringing a tear to my eye. And then it shows you how powerful that relationship between the two characters are. Despite how heightened their characters are, that you can create authentic emotion in a exaggerated film world. And I think that's the beauty of this film. And I think watching it again, my love for it has waned a little bit, for sure, which is why I'm glad I picked it, actually.
That's weird because our love has grown, like Eli and my love for this film has grown.
Because now I think, like, having seen so many more films, there's more to kind of compare it with and to pit it against. And that's not to say that it's a bad movie by any stretch, but it kind of puts things in perspective, and I still love it for how it makes me feel young again, almost. How it makes me feel young to see Nicolas Cage and Holly Hunter young. Which is kind of crazy. It's one of their first few roles.
There's another scene that just popped into my head because you were talking about that really emotionally effective scene in the car when they first steal Nathan Jr. and they have him in their living room in the trailer, and it's just like a series of shots of H.I., Ed, Nathan Jr., H.I., Ed, Nathan Jr. It's just cutting between the three of them. And then H.I., in a swell of emotion, says, "Oh, are you kidding me? We got ourselves a family here." And I think that's a good, like, hardcore moment, too.
Really
it's those things that kind of add ballast to the balloon.
Okay, before we get too deep into everything, I have like a few small notes about this. There isn't that much information about Raising Arizona, so I'm just going to jump through some context and then we can talk even more about this film. So this is their second movie. It came out in 1980. I don't know.
7, yes.
I knew that. My research paid off. Staring at the letterbox page right now. I was trying to read about this, and apparently Raising Arizona was the Coens' way of selling out. Because they wanted to make a mass market, audience-friendly comedy so that they wouldn't end up being confined to only making hard-boiled noirs like Blood Simple. So they're like,
Huh.
We're gonna make the opposite of Blood Simple.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily the opposite, but they were really just trying to bust out of just doing Blood Simple. And even
Right.
Blood Simple wasn't what they pitched, which is a horror. It was more of a thriller.
Mhm.
And you see that with the Coens, they're constantly trying new genres,
Right.
trying to hand different things. And from their second film, they were already in that, like thinking that way, trying to bust out of what they're comfortable in. Yeah, and so like one of the key features of the film is it's kind of southern twang to all the dialogue and stuff, which is very much influenced by William Faulkner, John Steinbeck, and there's a southern feel to the dialogue and the character names. And I was just reading about this, and apparently Roger Ebert hated it
Huh?
For that reason.
because he really hated
act-
that affect of
Oh.
like characters just spewing stuff in this way
Hmm.
that's like overwritten.
Yeah.
And I think he really disliked that kind of lack of reality to it, right?
Yeah. I have a quick question. Is there a Coen Brothers movie that doesn't have a very strong accent in it?
I don't know.
Oh,
Ye-
Depends.
I am not thinking of one.
It depends on what you
They
call a
all-
strong accent.
I feel like they all do, right?
I
In their
guess.
own ways.
Because they kind of use the accent as like a way to create another world,
Mm,
like a pocket of Americana somewhere.
yeah.
And so they lean into the accents to do that.
Yeah, it helps create world, it helps create tone. An accent can be the difference between drama and comedy for them.
Right.
And also, it helps define character specificity, similarly to some of the visual methods of establishing character that we've discussed.
Yeah.
Other notes, it was a very polarizing movie when it came out. I think kind of like how Ebert didn't really like how it was like this zany thing. I think people either really love how crazy and wild it is as a cartoon, or people are just like, this is childish and stupid or something. I think you kind of have two different kinds of ways of looking at the movie. You either lean into its wild stuff or you don't. And then that kind of dictates how you're going to enjoy it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I found this really interesting note, which is that when they were filming in Arizona, so this film is set in Tempe, Arizona, some local newspaper managed to find a copy of the shooting script and they hated it because they thought it portrayed Arizonans in a particularly bad way or in an unfriendly way, I guess, and said that it portrayed them as, quote, hicks with bad tastes in clothes. The public outcry was so bad that Joel Coen had to like make a public statement
That's hilarious.
to tell them that it took place in, quote, the Arizona of the mind.
What?
That's an even
That makes no
funnier
sense.
comment that he gave.
Which, like, I don't know if that helps, but okay. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know how, like, Arizonans now think of the movie.
The Arizona of the mind. I'm gonna get that tattooed on my back.
Yeah, you could say that, Fargo is the Minnesota of the mind.
Yeah.
Burn After Reading is the DC of the mind.
Yeah, it just is. So yeah, that's all the kind of like dumb facts I have. So we can talk about this. And the first thing I want to talk about, which kind of launches from what we were talking about, which is the emotional core of this, is I want to talk about the first scene or montage of scenes before the opening title. I mean, all I want to say now is that it's one of my favorite pre-title introductions ever. It's so
Yes.
efficient, establishes High and Ed's relationship so well, immediately forms this investment in them as a couple,
Yeah.
creates the world, the zany world immediately.
Yeah.
It's really funny and it's only 11 minutes.
Wow.
It's
What do
incredible.
y'all think?
What really stuck out to me was the opening and the epilogue as well, where High is narrating. And what I found really interesting and really effective is sort of the contrast between how High is so eloquent and like poetic when he's in his narrative voice side, compared to how he presents on screen as sort of like bumbling and
idiot.
dumb. And but I think that is so beautiful in a way, in that like the only way that he can like really truly communicate is through narration, and it's with us, the viewer. So I think it is he's sort of like leading you in and in a very like comforting way into this world, and then also like closing it out in a very beautiful way. And that makes the opening and the closing in the movie is like one of my favorites out of like all the Coens that we've seen.
It implies an inner life for the other characters who in some ways are, sketched a little bit caricaturishly. But if Hai has that rich of an inner life, then why not the other characters? It's kind of a nice, small, empathetic touch.
And I think you also see that like how like his two buddies who escape from prison, played by John Goodman and the other guy whose name I forgot, William Forsythe, they also fall in love with Nathan Jr. And that also kind of gives you a sense of like, they also want to form a family. There's that feeling that not that family, like having a kid is what brings people together, but but that these bad people, quote unquote, will find that kind of emotional connection with each other. Whether it's between two brothers or like a couple or between a cop and a criminal, like there's that kind of hopeful message to a lot of it. The opening scene has some of my favorite shots ever. Like the wide shot of the wedding scene.
Oh, that's so good.
Where you see that one half is Hai's family, I guess, where they're all wearing Hawaiian shirts, and one side is Edwina's colleagues, I guess, from the police station, all wearing their uniforms. And so, like, I remember that shot from when I first saw it, and like, I've never forgotten it. It's like 3 seconds, and you see it, and it's seared in your memory. You know, it's just very smart. It's funny because this scene reminds me of, and it's probably on par with the scene from Up, which has the same.
Yes, I was thinking about that too.
It has the same conclusion.
Wait, the conclusion is that she dies. It's not the same conclusion.
No, okay, not the same conclusion. Like, there's a conclusion in the middle. Yes. Yeah.
Sorry. Spoilers for Up.
Spoilers for Up. But yeah, in the middle of that montage when like you find out she can't have kids either. It's like the exact same thing here. Yes. Ed doesn't die in this. Yeah, and I think it's got that same. I mean, the Up one is specifically trying to be more sentimental.
Yes.
But this one gets to have its cake and eat it too. It's both sentimental and also really funny.
Yeah.
You have such immortal lines as the one about, I can't remember the entire line, but something that my seat could not find purchase, talking about how the fact that she cannot bear children, which is just a ridiculous line to write about something quite sad and tragic.
Yeah.
It also manages to establish a running bit that, again, is funny, says something about the world, brings out some specificity and some side characters. There are multiple people who say to H.I., well, okay then. And I think that sort of also sums up a sort of attitude about the movie. There's a sort of like, well, okay then.
I've been thinking a lot about how all the Coen films all speak to each other, and then like obviously, okay then is also something that reverberates when you think about Fargo, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And the opening scene has that really funny gag, which only from like rewatching it a few times, as long as you miss it, when Ed's in the police station and somebody off screen keeps telling her to not forget the thing. So don't forget the profile, don't forget the fingerprints. So each time Hai goes back, he reminds her that. And then when she's in her wedding dress, he says, don't forget a bouquet, Ed.
Oh.
It's such a quick gag. There's so many gags within this 11-minute span that it's like you kind of miss some stuff because it's flying so fast. But it creates this sense of time and the world that they live in. And like, honestly, I think Hai's outburst when he talks to Ed when Ed gets broken up with and she's crying while taking a photo is maybe one of the most romantic scenes I've ever seen. It is the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
Like, it feels so romantic even though it's weird and like not quite of our world. But I think Nic Cage brings such an authenticity to the character of Hai that makes it really work. And I think what you were talking about, the narration really helps as well because you feel like so invested and aligned with how he thinks.
Right.
And I was just reminded of like, I was reading some articles about Raising Arizona and people talking about how the way that he likes to rob convenience stores is almost like an addiction.
Yeah.
Because the middle chase sequence where he talks about his urge when he sees the convenience stores that he's driving past.
Yeah, it's
And-
like it's not even on my way home. That's
Yeah.
the line.
It's so funny.
As you were talking about the efficiency and running bits in those opening 11 minutes, it also brought to mind that chase sequence. And if we may talk about that
Let's
next.
go for it.
Oh, definitely.
What a scene. What a scene.
What an incredible scene.
It's so tightly constructed. All the geography is perfectly clear. And there are running gags. Like,
Mhm.
they keep on piling on obstacles for HI. The scene comes about after HI and Ed have guests, and HI punches the guest. So they're at a low point. They drive past a convenience store. HI says he's going to get diapers. And then he goes in and he robs the store. And it sets off just a bonkers chase sequence. And the way that the running gags come about is that the Coens keep on piling on obstacles for HI. The convenience store clerk has a gun. Ed drives away angrily. The cops arrive. Dogs start chasing him. He has to run through houses and grocery stores.
He's holding the diapers the whole time.
Yeah.
For most of it at the start as well.
And then drops them, and then drops them, and then afterwards picks them up at the end of the whole chase.
It's the button of the whole scene. It's just,
Yeah.
it's so smart the way the things pop up, have middle beats that sort of heighten the bit, and then the ending beat for everything that sort of ties everything up so tidily.
I love that ending bit because I was watching it with somebody who had not seen it before. And they commented like, oh no, they didn't even get the diapers. And then when High gets picked up by Ed, as they're talking, he's just saying stuff like, take a left, take a
Yeah.
right. And you're just like, you're not even registering because it seems so banal and like you're not sure why he's bringing her, but it doesn't matter because it just seems normal. And then you realize only at the end, or maybe you don't even realize that he is telling her where to go pick up the diapers, which they stack so many things on each other within the scene.
Right.
That
Yeah.
within the conversation, they're essentially stacking a different conversation on top of it.
Yeah.
And it's so fluid. It's like one of those all-time crazy comedy / action set pieces in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I mean, I also love the use of really wide angle lenses, especially with the cop that runs into that room.
Oh, yes.
And then all the dogs come out. Like, honestly, one of the zaniest and most like over the top that the Coens have ever kind of pushed their cinematography.
Mhm,
And
definitely.
the cinematographer here is Barry Sonnenfeld, who is now a director
Oh.
of his own. Yeah.
Oh.
He shot also Blood Simple and also Miller's Crossing. He also did When Harry Met Sally. And he's a director now who is actually probably most well known for Men in Black,
Yeah.
which I didn't realize. And Wild
That's
Wild West.
awesome.
Men in Black, one of the great New York movies.
Yeah.
As we're talking about this scene's use of wide angle lens, we should also talk about its camera movement, because here I think we can draw a direct line from the Coens' work on Sam Raimi's sets and their friendship with Sam Raimi into the stylistic language of Raising Arizona. So there's a technique that Raimi pioneered on Evil Dead 1, which is that he would nail the camera to a board kind of loosely so that it would shake around, a camera operator on either side of this 2x4 that's holding the camera, and they would both run. So it's like a shaky, floating, almost like a dolly in, but it's two people running the camera in. You see it in Evil Dead on these shots that sort of very quickly run in on the shack. You see it in Blood Simple, running in on Frances McDormand's house. You see it here in this chase sequence.
You also
Right.
see it in the scene where Mrs. Arizona is screaming when she finds out
Oh,
that Nathan
yeah.
Jr. is gone.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm just making a note of this so I can maybe use
So
it.
you can buy a bunch of 2x4s.
Yeah.
That scene where she's screaming, they shot that backwards.
That makes sense.
Oh.
They also do when there's that scene where the car drives straight up to Nathan Jr.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what I was thinking. Because I was like, they can't have gone that close to the baby. I was like, how did they do that?
That's that very
Smart.
strong, like
Smart.
scrappy energy to this film.
Yeah,
Yes.
and there's also a lot of like speed ramping, but to go in faster motion than people usually use to go in slow-mo. And I'm always such a big fan of people who use fast motion in films because no one uses it because everyone think it like feels like it's so gimmicky, but sometimes it really works. And that includes this film and 20th Century Women.
Ooh, there's so many just creative and sort of high rolling choices here. Of course, in the cinematography, as we're discussing, also in the editing. Something that is coming to mind now is when Leonard Smalls is visiting Nathan, Arizona in his office, and he reaches over and grabs a fly that was in front of Nathan's face, but they don't cut on the action. They sort of show Leonard Smalls lunging forward, pinching the air, and then they cut. After he's done moving, they cut on the static into him holding the fly. It's just such a rhythmic and creative and unusual choice. It's a punctuation mark that helps set tone and really create character. It builds up Leonard Smalls too.
Talking about Leonard Smalls, what do y'all think of this character?
Who can win in a fight? Shiger or Leonard Smalls?
Sugar.
Yeah. My
Yeah.
money's on Shiger.
I mean, if High can beat Leonard Smalls, think about it. Fun fact: apparently, Mad Max was an influence on the Coens,
Totally
which
makes
makes
sense.
a lot of sense.
To me, Leonard Smalls is maybe the weak point of the movie. Earlier, we were talking about how every character, even though they have buffoonish or cartoonish elements, they have heart and are able to become enamored by Nathan Jr. Leonard Smalls is the only character who does not and views the baby cynically. He at times feels like a bit of a narrative convenience to sort of be the big baddie, and that feels written away by having him appear in H.I.'s dreams. But I both see the benefit of having one character who does not have that kind of heart. It also feels like it steps away a bit from the idea that everyone has a heart and an inner life.
Yeah. I think it sort of shows the Coens early on in their like screenwriting in that they need a force like Leonard Smalls to like sort of propel the plot forward, and just using him as more of a plot device and also like I guess also a tonal break from the comedic bits to sort of add some more tension, even comically so. But yeah, I would agree with Eli that I like don't know if it's like super necessary territory.
I agree with both of you, which is why I kind of brought it up, because I think Smalls' character is the thing that is key to why I think the film waned for me on like coming back to it, because it doesn't feel as part of the film's world as the rest of its elements. Its supernatural quality is confusing because even though the rest of the world is heightened, it's not supernatural. And then you have this strange force. But I think that was the point of it from their writing standpoint. It's more of a I don't think it works kind of thing.
Right.
And it is interesting that it kind of he's almost a character that is born from High's imagination, right? It is from his dream sequence, like he willed it into existence. And there's of course that really interesting note, which they never really explain, where High sees that Smalls has the same tattoo as him, and it's never explained. It's just kind of this weird detail.
For a second, I thought they were gonna lead up to like a Martha moment. Call back to our Justice League, where High would just reveal his tattoo, and that would be the reason that they stop fighting.
I've forgotten how that scene ended, and then I was like, oh, are they gonna be like their brothers? I can't remember.
Woody Woodpecker. Why did you say Woody Woodpecker?
That's my mother.
It's such a weird thing that they put in, and it lacks the tightness of like the writing. It's almost like if I read the script for Raising Arizona, all his lines are in flames. Like there's that feeling like if I read it, then like all his lines are just burnt. That's what I imagine in my head, which is almost kind of effective when you think about it, where like they have created this very out of this world character, but I think it definitely takes you out.
I would say for me personally, Goodman and Forsyth's characters lean on the too wild for me to accept side. and that's why Raising Arizona isn't like up there with the other
Oh, interesting.
Coen Brothers movies. But because I think it was just like too much of the balance is shifted outwards towards the more bonkers side. I think it's a tough job to balance everything.
Yeah.
And it's already a miracle that they were able to do as much so as they could. But I think for me personally, it's just like a little bit out of balance.
The screaming kind of like goes too far.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
I
it does.
entirely disagree.
No.
Or John Goodman screaming. It's so funny. Him emerging from a hole in the rain, covered in mud,
That's good.
and just yelling for like 2 minutes is pure cinema.
For me, the screaming in the car when they realized they left
They left
Nathan
the baby,
on
yeah.
top of the car was too much because the scene just went on for way too long after the screaming starts. But for me, at least, I think the characters of High's friends, Gail and Neville.
Wait, I just realized the gender swap names. Ed being
Edwina.
like a regular, like a
Oh,
dude's
yeah.
name. And then when they make the joke about the kid being Ed Jr. and
Oh, right.
Goodman's character says, "Oh, for a boy," like that's
Huh.
short for Edwin.
Interesting.
Male version of Edwina.
Yeah.
Along with gender swap names, in that opening montage, there was a beat that sat uncomfortably, which was in the prison therapy group. There's a man who's talking about having menstrual cramps, and it felt a little bit like a small transphobic joke aside, and it didn't really feel comfortable. It's sort of the same
Yeah.
thing that happens in Life of Brian, where there's this whole sequence where a character's talking about identifying as trans, and I know that they're old movies, but it still is disappointing and sits on
Yeah.
the enjoyment of
Yeah.
the movie.
Yeah, it sours it a little bit watching
Yeah.
the movie.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Definitely agree.
But anyway, I thought the two criminals that escape, like they do land for me like on the side of working within his universe.
Mm-hmm.
And I love what they bring to the story, which is like essentially what you have is a story about a guy choosing between his family or his old life. Except his
Yeah.
old life is like petty crimes.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe robbing a store isn't petty, but but it's just pretty minor. But him robbing convenience stores is pretty small. They create a nice conflict, and I felt like if they had leaned more into that rather than having to create the Leonard Smalls character, that might have been enough to create some conflict between High and Ed, and
Right.
to have somebody else take the kids, right?
Right.
So maybe if it was, this is just me dreaming about it, but like maybe if it was High fighting his old life rather than High fighting unspeakable evil, then it's might make more sense. It might emotionally be more resonant.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just thinking out loud.
Do you guys hear that? Do you hear alarm bells?
Oh, it's Skip Lievsay Corner! I'm so excited. So I feel like I like caught on as soon as you hear that.
It's everyone's favorite time, and I do mean everyone, because everyone loves Skip Lievsay.
Yes, Skip.
So, because this is early on in Skip Lievsay's career and the Coens' career, there's not a ton of information out there. There isn't really an interview with Skip Lievsay like there is for some of the more recent Coen Brothers movies. But I did manage to find a conversation between the Soundworks Collection, which is a really great podcast about sound design and sound editing, and both Skip Lievsay and Carter Burwell. And there's a brief sequence where they talk about Raising Arizona. And I just wanted to drop a little fact.
Wait, before you say this fact, it is sort of insane the amount of research you've been doing into Skip Lievsay this whole series. And if this is the last time that you drop a Skip Lievsay bomb on us, I am oh so grateful to you, Eli.
Yes. We could kind of just change the name of the title. Like the episode just Skip Lievsay. Burn after reading it. Skip Lievsay. Raising Arizona.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm open to talk. I'm open to skipping stones. So basically, the big thing that I learned is that every time there's a shot with a car driving where you see the car from the exterior and sometimes interior, that was shot MOS, mute on sound. It was not recorded with sound. So they had to recreate the entire chase sequence sonically in post. They did not record on-set sound for that.
That's insane.
probably because it was cheaper or faster. But in
Yeah.
addition, Carter Burwell dropped that he was on set for that sequence when it was being shot. And he said that you can't have a few dogs out in the street without every dog in the neighborhood barking. So it was just a cacophony on set of
Wow.
barking dogs. So every time you see a car, that is created in post. And I
Oh
would
my
not have known that.
God. Skip Lievsay, working magic yet again.
Yep.
Thanks, Eli.
Thank you, Eli.
Thank you for our daily dose of Skip knowledge.
Hey, don't thank me. Thanks,
Thanks,
Skip.
Skip. Oh,
We
so
love
good.
you, Skip.
What if Deep Cut just transitioned into just being about sound?
Hey, I would be okay with it.
I would not mind. Honestly, I feel like there's a lot to learn and there's a lot to talk about.
Skip Cut, I don't know.
Skip cut.
Deep skip.
But also we should shout out Carter Burwell, who did some really
Iconic music in
tracks
this,
on
yeah.
the soundtrack this time around.
Which you heard a preview of. Well, we tried our best to YOLO.
He really is a chameleon. His work here doesn't sound like the same composer as, well,
Mm.
certainly No Country for Old Men, but even Fargo or, certainly Inside Llewyn Davis.
Is he the only guy that they've worked with?
I think so.
Mhm, I think so.
Damn.
But I think what it is that the Coens rely on the music so much to sell whatever the genre they're trying to do every time around.
Mm.
Whereas there are through lines through the cinematography that they employ on each film they do. I think with the score, Burwell is as fluid as they are with the genres they're trying to take on, but I think that makes him all the more impressive of a songwriter.
Perfect example of what you're saying when the Coens are maybe sending up the spy genre in Burn After Reading. One of the things that is absolutely committed to that genre is the music.
Yes.
The timpani, serious drums of and the tense strings as Clooney's constructing what we learn is the dildo chair. It's like totally committed and
Yeah.
serious, where other parts of the movie get to go where they want and be silly.
I didn't do any research into this, but y'all know like that theme song, that yodeling, like what's that connection with Arizona? I don't really know.
Honestly,
but it
I
works
have
so
no
well.
clue.
Like where does that come from? No idea. Do your own research, everyone. Sorry, we don't have the knowledge here.
Can I ask, is Blood Simple like sort of a film that has classic Coen like over the top characters, or is it more like serious?
It
than
does
that?
have slightly over the top characters, but not by so much. Like definitely Raising Arizona swings the other way completely.
Yeah.
I guess the biggest similarity between this and Blood Simple is that Blood Simple also has a force of nature,
Yeah.
which is this person who is like the hitman, and he is kind of over the top. He wears a cowboy hat. He's kind of like a cowboy, and it's a bit over the top, and he seems very powerful.
Mm.
Yeah. But it's still pretty rooted in some kind of realism, maybe. He speaks in kind of like an affected way, but Blood Simple is much more quote unquote naturalistic
Right.
compared to this. If you were in 1987 following the careers of young directors and you're like, oh, the Coens, I remember them. I'm going to watch the next one. I can't wait for more thriller. You'll be very surprised by Raising Arizona. The only thing in common is crime, which crime is in a lot of their films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which says a lot, actually, when you think about it.
Mhm. Definitely does.
You talked a little bit about this, Wilson, I think, when you were talking about how you love the prologue and the epilogue.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the ending of Raising Arizona. And I think that is partially why it is one of my favorite Coen films, because it is such a hopeful ending, which
Oh, yeah.
you don't always get with the Coens.
I'd say you rarely get.
Yeah, especially last week's movie.
Yeah. Maybe if you look into all of them, maybe this is the most hopeful.
Yeah.
I think the only one I can think of is Old Brother that I've seen that has pretty positive ending. But this one is especially hopeful, and like it doesn't tell you that this epilogue that Hai is dreaming of is happening,
Mhm.
but you know it's a dreamlike thing, but you know that you want it to happen, and that wanting and that desire is so aligned with Hai
Yeah.
and his narration that you feel that it is happening in your mind.
Yeah.
And it
it's
is
gonna
happening in
come
front of
through.
you. And so I really love that. And I love that that's how it bookends the film with his narration. And yeah, I mean, like, if you really step back and look at it, like, there's no reason to think that this should happen.
Yeah.
It really creates such a strong, positive mood. I couldn't find any interviews with the Coens about this film because it's so old. But I did find one clip from a interview from Sydney where it was mostly
Australia?
Yeah, Sydney, Australia.
Directed by Baz Luhrmann? Starring Nicole
Wait, what?
Kidman?
No.
Aussie.
Yeah, but anyway, so there's this TV spot where they talk about the film, and then there's a very, very short interview with Joel and Ethan Coen. And essentially what they say is, we wanted to make a film that made people happy. And it does make me happy. There's like a bittersweetness to that kind of happy ending, which I think because of Raising Arizona is something I really like when I watch films. Maybe. That's also the same in that scene in the car that I talk about. It has that one line when Edwina tells, "Hi, if I'm as bad as you, what good are we to each other? You and me is just a fool's paradise." One of my all-time favorite lines. It's so overwritten, but also so sweet and endearing and sad.
It really
And
is.
it clinches the emotional component of this film for me. Whenever I think about that scene, I feel like I'm gonna cry. When I think about that line.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how powerful that emotional connection I have with this film is. And I can't explain it. Like, very few films have that kind of power over me. Of all the films, it's this crazy, weird film.
Yeah.
I know that for me, movies can kind of wedge their way into my chest in a similar way to what you're describing when they disarm me with humor and then come in with an emotional turn. Like, very abrupt emotional turns from either like sad to happy or vice versa.
Yeah.
Just like do me in. And I totally see what you're saying, Ben, that
Because you're vulnerable in one way, and then they like switch it up, and then you're vulnerable in another way in such a quick instant. They're like,
yeah.
"What happened? You like slice me open in the front, and then you slice me open in the back."
It's like they replaced the comedic punchline with something sad.
Yeah.
There's that kind of play there. I think it's not the perfect balance in this film, but like when they hit it, they really hit it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a matter of really good writing in those scenes.
and really good acting.
Yes,
Yeah.
really great acting. Yeah.
Cage and Hunter have fantastic chemistry
Incredible.
as total opposites.
Yeah.
Yeah. How does this work? How does this relationship work, and how do they make you buy it in 10 minutes? I don't get it.
Insane.
They have an easyness with each other. They have a rapport.
They really do.
Or as Brad Pitt says in Burn After Reading, they have a rapport.
I'm liking these callbacks to the previous Coen episodes.
Yeah. Some running gags within the podcast. We keep on talking about how the tone shifts work, and I keep on like thinking back to all the other Coen films and thinking about how do I know any other filmmakers that are like as versatile whenever they choose to do something different, like executing it so well.
I know who you're gonna say.
No, I was not gonna say anybody.
Oh, I was gonna say Johnny. I was
Okay.
gonna say Johnny Toe.
Yeah, I was like the closest that comes to it is Johnny Toe, but I think within the realm of like American genres, and the Coens do it like so incredibly well. Whereas like Toe, I feel like constructs his own vision of the genre within his films. The Coens, the way that they stick to genre conventions and like play it differently in terms of like emotional connection and also in the script writing. Yeah, I think it's sort of unparalleled.
I think the difference like between those two is that Toe is creating Hong Kong cinema, whereas the
Yeah.
Coens are commenting and playing with old classic Hollywood genres.
Right.
So they have a larger history of films that they're playing with, whereas it feels like Toe is birthing those films.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah, he really is just birthing them out of his ass in the best way possible.
Yeesh.
just pulling them out from that with their ankles, right? Yeah, from the earth.
Yeah.
Hong Kong romantic comedy. Pull it out.
Another director who I might throw out there who is able to, I think, even more invisibly take on different types of movies would be Sidney Lumet.
Mm. Mm.
I haven't seen a lot of Lumet.
Me neither. Possible.
Perhaps in the future.
I've seen the highly rated ones, but I haven't seen too many.
Well, stay tuned.
Oh.
Ooh.
Okay. Because we picked 4 really diverse films from the Coens,
Yes.
they also all happen to have different DPs.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I don't know where this conversation is going to go. I'm going to put that out there first. Yeah, so we have had No Country for Old Men with Roger Deakins, which is their most frequent collaborator when it comes to DPs. And then we've had Inside Llewyn Davis with Bruno Delbonnel. And we've had Burn After Reading with Emmanuel Lubezki.
Yes.
Am I saying it right?
Chivo.
Chivo.
Yes.
And then we know it's Chivo. And then now we have, with Raising Arizona, we have Barry Sonnenfeld. It's probably too much to ask, which is your favorite DP based on these 4
Delbonnel.
films? Ooh.
Sorry, I'm claiming it early. I am in Delbonnel's corner. I think there is nothing that beats the cinematography of Inside Llewyn Davis in their filmography. Sorry, I really went in early and aggressive.
I wasn't going to make a decision because it's so hard to like they're different films, they have different goals.
Yes.
The DP is pushing towards different ends.
Yes, definitely.
It's like an apples to oranges kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
They're so good at choosing collaborators that fit the project at hand.
It's appropriate.
And
yes.
add to it.
Sorry, I only say Delbonnel so decisively because I feel like the cinematography in that movie feels like a warm hug on a winter's day, and
it is.
When a look of a film can really like comfort you and like affect you emotionally, like that's special. That's special.
Here's an interesting note. I've been listening to the Team Deakins podcast, which is the podcast which Roger Deakins and his partner James Deakins do together, and he was talking about obviously his work. There's a interview with Joel Coen as well, and a lot of people talk about Roger Deakins and how he prefers wider lenses and how he brings that to the Coen world, right? And a lot of people attribute the choice of, we've been talking about this before, where they shoot slightly wider medium shots so you can see more of the space. We talk a lot about this. Well, what's interesting is that Roger Deakins says that the reason why he used wider lenses on the first film that he did with them, which was Barton Fink, was actually because the Coens had worked with Barry Sonnenfeld, who also preferred wider lenses. He gravitated towards them because the directors gravitated towards them. And so Barry Sonnenfeld's use of wide lenses is actually a big influence on Deakins, who kind of took that influence through the Coens, and then that was how he kind of came to his own style. And so that's a pretty interesting connection there.
Yeah.
So like if you look at the wide shots in Raising Arizona, that's kind of the seed of Deakins in a sense, you know? It's kind of interesting.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Also because we've been talking about these type of shots for like 3 episodes or all 4 episodes. It's good to know now where it came from.
So if you think about it, Roger Deakins' career exists because of Man in Black.
In a very, very, very indirect way.
Because Barry Sonnenfeld wanted to do Man. No, I don't think so. I don't know what's the first film he did after he decided he was going to be a director, but yeah. I remember this conversation I had with a DP, a local DP from Singapore, and he said something really funny to me, which is that he was talking about Wong Kar-wai's My Blueberry Nights. And he was saying it looks beautiful, but it wasn't shot by Christopher Doyle. And he said, maybe the DP isn't important.
Maybe the DP is what?
Isn't important. Bearing in mind that he's a DP himself.
Ooh.
And I don't know, like it's interesting. Not really a discussion, but like an interesting thought to think about, like how much do directors control and influence what the look of the film ends up being, right?
You can say that for any department head, though. Yeah, I would say
exactly.
And I also think it really depends from filmmaker to filmmaker, right? Because you have filmmakers that want to be more collaborative, and you have directors that have a very singular vision that they just want people to execute.
I think about how we think about DPs, right? And how people kind of attribute certain qualities of image to different DPs. We think about Chivo and how people always characterize him for his use of wide lenses because of the work that he does, especially with Malik.
Mm-hmm.
And then think about how different it is in Burn After Reading. And so to my mind, I'm thinking about like sometimes the best DPs are actually the ones who are able to contort themselves and be a chameleon to the project and like try and do something that fits the story more than about applying a certain kind of cinematic style to the film, right?
Yeah.
And so there's that feeling of the DP is trying to become invisible in a sense, right? I mean, this is how Deakins works. He doesn't like the camera to distract, actually.
Right.
Yeah, so like I've just been thinking about that and don't really have a point to it, but yeah.
I agree with what Wilson says that it varies from director to director, it varies from project to project, and it depends on the collaborators at hand. But if you're asking me personally, the best thing about this art form that we love is the collaboration.
Yeah.
I would like to think that anyone can bring something to the table that helps make a movie great. So the director is maybe the shepherd. And I think the Coens are so good at this. This is how they work with their actors too. They know sort of where they're headed and they give their collaborators license to do the walking there.
That's a really great way of putting it.
They really let the rest of the team bring the film to wherever it needs to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard to say without really being in the room.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
But the fact that they are such well constructed and considered movies, usually it feels like a team effort. You can hear Deakins talk about this on his podcast and like how he likes working with the Coens because they have such a strong collaboration, and that Deakins himself is also somebody who really likes to listen to what other people want and like are trying to do. I'd love to see how things work on a Coen set.
That would be cool.
I also think it's interesting because there are not a lot of directing teams or directing pairs out there, and the Coens are probably the most famous of them. And just trying to think how the dynamic is different when you have not one but two people calling the shots, and I would say they would probably be more open to collaborating with other people because the directing itself is already a collaboration between two people, or the directing, producing, and writing. Yeah.
People always talk about how like the Coens would just finish each other's sentences, which sounds crazy. I saw this quote. I forgot which movie it was about, where somebody was talking about being on set with them, and then either Ethan or Joel would say to the other, "It's like, hey, Ethan, the thing? No, I know what you're talking about." And then immediately goes talk to the actor about the thing.
Oh my
and
God.
they don't even confirm the thing. They just know the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It sounds kind of crazy.
That's wild. So then it'll be interesting to see Joel on his own.
Oh yeah.
This year, and we'll probably cover it on the podcast. I hope we will.
Maybe we will.
I would do that. Maybe we'll get press passes.
Oh, maybe.
I don't know what to, but you know, something.
Just give me a link.
Yeah.
Give me a link. Coen, give me a link.
Whoever A24 publicist reaching out to you now via the airwaves.
Thinking about this whole like collaboration thing, also thinking about listening to Joel Coen's interview with Deakins. He talks about how scared he was on the set of Blood Simple because they were very young when they did Blood Simple.
How young? Older than us now?
Younger
Hopefully.
than me now.
Fuck off.
Yeah. I think if I'm not wrong, one of them was 29 and one of them was like 25. 26,
Okay.
4. That's both younger than me. And they talked about how like confused they were all the time. They didn't know what was going on. Totally understand that. It's your first freaking feature. And they didn't really do that many short films before that.
Yeah.
It's interesting thinking about a podcast being a director-focused podcast where we talk about what the director is doing, but it's really such a collaborative medium. So I'm so appreciative of Eli's frequent skip sections. Don't skip the skip.
Don't skip the skip section.
Yeah, because they tell you that filmmaking isn't like one person really doing it. Even though all our episodes have a director's name at the front, like in the end it's made by like a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, let's throw it in the trash. Let's throw the directors in the trash.
Make a film without a director.
Hey, just wait till we get to talk about Mark Mangini, another sound editor.
Can't wait.
Can't wait. Said with so much reticence.
I thought you could hear it in my voice.
Oh boy.
He's listening.
Mark
Eli's
Mangini.
listening.
Any final Coen words though before we sign out? If this is our Let's just say it is.
For now.
Let's just say we're closing this out for now. But any final words on your Coens binge this time around?
I have a thought. As we've been talking about specifically with Raising Arizona, it's nice that these movies can sort of come and go in your life and they'll take on different resonances. I think that's the benefit of them having such breadth and depth, is that there are going to be years of my life where A Serious Man is more relevant. And there are years of my life where, well, I hope not Miller's Crossing or No Country for Old Men, but they have so many different flavors. And that allows them to not just be versatile on the screen, but in the lives of their audience. And I think that's part of what makes them such monumental directors and why they mean a lot to me personally. There's a Coen for every season.
Yeah.
Put that on a sweater.
Yeah, let's do that.
And I also wanted to say that they've done a lot to shape for me a sense of a modern American Jewish sensibility and identity in terms of their wryness and observational skills and what I'd call an empathetic skepticism. And that's been important to me.
I think they're probably the most reliably interesting American directors, although in a very specific tone. I'm trying to think of another filmmaker of their generation that is most similar, and I guess the only other name I can think of is Scorsese.
But really operating in a different sphere altogether.
Yeah.
But he also has a very strong sense of like the kind of worlds he wants to do, and was also experimenting a lot with style and stuff. I mean, Scorsese's older than them, but he's probably one of the more prolific and still consistent directors of these generations, right? At least in America. Yeah,
Right.
that I can think of.
Could the Coens do Goodfellas? And could Scorsese do Burn After Reading?
I don't know.
Very interesting question.
I think by Nate, I'm not going to answer that.
Sorry. I just
I
wanted
abstain.
to stupidly started a discussion
No.
that I didn't want to
Not
have.
stupid.
Hey, they both used Nic Cage at one point.
Oh, interesting.
Do you have final thoughts, Wilson?
Being the Coen noob going into this series, I feel very grateful. I keep on saying this, but watching these movies, most of them for the first time, have been such a joy. And I really wish that, like, having you two tell me about your past experiences with the Coens, like, I really wish that the Coens were a part of my initial film education that I gave myself. But I am still, like, so happy to be able to experience these films in this day and age, and I'm going to dive deeper into their filmography past this podcast, and I think really treat myself to some good movies. I think they're really incredible and always a treat when you watch them, but also versatile and different, and I think that's what makes them, what I can say now, one of my favorite American directors.
You're here. It's a very old-timey way to say I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for following our Coen series. Hope you enjoyed it and hope you're ready for more very deep dives like this.
Ooh.
Thank you for listening to Deep Cut. Please rate and review because it helps us to keep making the show. Be sure to subscribe to and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts so you know when our next episode drops. You can give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram at Deep Cut Pod. And we've got some exciting new episodes coming up soon. And maybe some more guests.
Cheeky.
Be sure to join us to talk about movies on our Discord server, to which you'll find a link in the description. And as always, thank you, Justina Yam, for our beautiful artwork.
I'm Wilson.
I'm Ben.
I'm Eli.
Take care, and we're looking forward to talking about more movies with you next time.